Hi, everybody. And here we are about a month later doing number 98 in the Raise and Initiations webinar commentary. I looked back and I saw that I've been doing some work on the second part of this book after the rules have been discussed in writing pretty much, and you'll find these on Makara, since 2014. So it's quite a book, and it's taken quite a while. This is the 14th of December, 2017, and I think the last time I was with you was the 15th of November. Of course, we might say that it may not be the smartest thing to start right now because the moon is in Scorpio and Mercury is retrograde. So the moon is passing through that area of the sky that we call via combusta, the fiery way, the way of combustion, and there's no way of knowing whether things will really turn out the way you plan. I've been struggling for more than an hour, almost 2 hours, to even get this program launched. So the Mercury retrograde is certainly in effect. Well, this is a wonderful book. In a way, the last one that DK wrote, and it was, pulled together so that it was published in the, well, rather later than it was written, published in the 1960s, I think, the early 1960s, something of that nature. And basically, as you know, what I try to do is give you my impressions as we go along. Of course, well, my mind is not the mind of Master DK, although I wouldn't mind being impressed by that greater mind. So obviously what I say is limited, but perhaps it may trigger some thoughts which will be useful to you. I have no way of knowing. Probably the audience for this kind of work is fairly small. What I do intend to do over the next few years is to, well, one can't deal with all of his books, of course. But in this method of video recording, these sort of video commentaries, I will try to choose some books or sections of books which I think will be useful to you. There's already a video commentary on the last part of a treatise on cosmic fire. All the first part of that book, except for the last 100 pages, is all done in a more meticulous manner, which has to be read. And there are other books as well that demand attention. I've also done written commentaries on initiation, human and solar, pretty much the entire book, and you can find that on Makara. I've also selected out sections from the old commentary, quite a bit from Esoteric Psychology, Volume 2. Those are ready and have been on Makara for quite a while. Sometimes people have a little difficulty in understanding the old commentary. I'm not saying I'm immune to such difficulties, but I offer you my thoughts on these things, and maybe they will prove useful and stimulating, whether they are correct or incorrect. Maybe you'll notice they're incorrect, and that will stimulate you to correct them. I'm trying to think if there are any other books. I think I've been selective in my commentaries. I haven't done entire books. maybe a treatise on white magic would be a good one to work with, since it's such a practical book. Of course, when it comes to the material specifically on the devas, we realize that he has not given us the magical words, the formulas which must be applied in order to become a practical occultist. But he says that if we study these matters intellectually, then later, will it be a century, 2 or 3, when he can actually give us the operative words and mantrams and formulas, it will go much faster for us because we will have the foundation of intellectual understanding. I'm sorry that I'm in that condition that where there's a bit of a cough, and so occasionally you may find me signing off for a little while, just to clear that. But be that as it is, we are having a discussion together. And in talking to myself about these things, forcing myself really to talk about these things, I'm talking to you as well. And so you can use these in your study groups if you wish. And perhaps it will become possible to go deeper. Well, we're on page 714, and we've been talking about the sequence, the last sequence of revelation, interpretation, intention, and will. There's another item there that could be brought into the picture, and it sometimes is in a trio of words: purpose, will, and intention. We all seek the deeper revelation. Hopefully our mind is of such a nature and sharp and well-grounded and devoid of the customary illusions that our interpretation will not be illusory. This takes us into the realm of Mercury, and so much of what we do with Master Decay relates to Mercury. He is, as is the Buddha, in my view anyway, a representative of Mercury, just the way the Christ represents more Venus. And when it comes to Master KH, he seems to have a fair balance between the two, Mercury and Venus. Well, now, just going along fairly casually, the place that the will plays in inducing revelation. Our minds are very limited at the moment, and our brains relatively unresponsive, and the possible revelation, which is always present, DK assures us, may not make its impact. So maybe what DK calls the will be useful and successful in inducing a greater revelation of the truths, the facts, the esoteric facts, the occult facts, which temporarily are hidden from us because of our insensitivity. There are 3 words connected with this. Now, we're on the 5th initiation, I should be saying. Last time I had hoped that I would be able to complete commentary on this discussion of the 5th, but other necessities intervened and it was not possible. So we're continuing to discuss the 5th initiation. There are three words connected with this initiation which are of a real importance to its correct understanding. They are emergence, will, and purpose. Now, interestingly, the sequence here, will and purpose are still in this threefold sequence. Intention is not. Emergence is newly put in. But will and purpose are reversed. In this particular case, will preceding the word purpose. Let's see if that has any significance. With the emergence aspect, we have already dealt under the term raising up, or the transition from the darkness of matter to the light of the spirit. Now, this will, the phenomenal, that's phenomenon, phenomenal nature. The phenomenal nature will experience the result of inner impulsions and will rise. We can call it the ascension, the raising up, the ability to deal with levels of vibration which were hitherto entirely out of reach. And where is spirit? You know, well, spirit is everywhere, of course, and everything is spirit, but if we want to be specific about it, we can refer to the spirit as the monad, and we might look here as the rising up or raising up from the darkness of matter on this great pilgrimage back to the light of the spirit on the second subplane. Now, I think what I'd like to do is make sure that we have some charts to refer to, and I always have these handy, you know, and they are important. I always gravitate to chart number 8 here. You'll notice that Keith Bailey has prepared these in color for the AUM group, so I always like to acknowledge his labor on that, lo, these many years ago. And Tuya, my wife, has done some really good work on the egoic lotus and getting more faithful colors, the rose color, instead of the red color, which does not occur apparently in the petals of the egoic lotus. Anyway, let's see where we are here. Okay, so we've dealt with the phenomenal effects, that which is registered on the outer level when the inner powers impact that level and cause significant, noticeable changes. Now he's going to take us into the will, about which he frequently says we know nothing or just about nothing. But of the will, its uses and its functions, as yet we know little. Now, of course, the we is what I might call the identificatory we. The identificatory we, meaning there's a lot that he knows about it because he's an initiate into the mysteries of being. But he identifies so much with us as he's writing these commentaries, so minor commentaries upon commentaries, that this identification puts him in the position that when he says we, he includes us. And he puts himself on that level that he is like unto us, although he does have the master's consciousness. But he's talking about disciples and initiates, and maybe even from his own point of view, there are so many possible progressions in the nature of will that he considers his own position as one in which he knows little of the true nature of solar systemic will, cosmic will, and so forth. Knowledge as to the nature of will in any true sense comes only after the third initiation, and certainly, he has this. TK has this because he is a master. Now, we might not have known that except for sort of a slip that Alice Bailey made, in which his name was given out at the bottom of a certain page. Up to that time, he had simply been known as a Tibetan and as an initiate of some kind, and not necessarily a master, and not necessarily identified with the name Jual Kul. But in any case, that was given out, and we have come to know who he is. So he certainly has knowledge as to the nature of will, up to a point, of course, because there are probably aspects of will that are far beyond him as well. From that time on, the initiate demonstrates increasingly and steadily the first divine aspect, that of the will and the right use of power. So this takes us to the idea of the first ray, the ray of will and power, and the aspect of the will is particularly the first aspect of divinity. When it comes to being, we can't really say that being is identified with the first aspect because it's inclusive of all aspects. So it's very much the point within the triangle, and the triangle consists of will, love, and mind. The first aspect of divinity is necessarily closely associated with the first ray of power or will. Maybe there's some distinction here between them, but all of these are closely associated, and it's really the last thing to be developed as we go along through the human phase. We may, on the path of probation, deal with the fourth and the sixth ray, and on the path of discipleship with the third ray and the fifth. But the path of initiation is very much a path of will, the first and seventh rays. And over all these rays and over this entire process, the second ray, which is the major ray at this time of our planet and the major ray of our solar system, will increase in power. So we have to develop as much love as may be possible, and on the basis of that love, and not short-circuiting the quality of love, we can move into the quality of will, of the and the nature of the first ray. He says, however, here I shall, however, only consider the ray angle incidentally, for I want to elucidate for you the nature of the will in some clear measure, though complete understanding is not possible. Well, it just, there is a place in one of the books where he discusses that identification with a ray or working under a ray is in fact a limitation. Now, we look at great beings and we realize they too have their rays, and maybe they realize also that there comes a point in their development where the emphasis upon the ray under which they work is also a limitation. One has to look at rays eventually as instruments for expression and not as that which confines you, though on the ray path there is a tendency to so identify with a particular ray that for the time one is treading that path, it insulates him, the initiate, the monad, from expression or interest or development upon other rays. These are subtleties, and I suppose only when we come closer to the status of a master will these subtle distinctions really make sense and not simply be an intellectual recognition. The Lord of the world is, we are told, the sole repository of the will and the purpose of his overshadowing cosmic soul. Now, the Lord of the world, we can consider him as Sanat Kumara. Sometimes it's difficult to know when we're speaking of Sanat Kumara and when we're speaking of the planetary logos in its entirety, because it seems that Sanat Kumara is kind of an emanation of the planetary logos, but at other times it seems that he is the planetary logos himself. Now, what is the cosmic soul of the Lord of the world? And I suppose if we went to this page, and here's maybe one of the biggest maps that we have, covering the entire supercosmic plane, you might call it, we see that planetary logoi are found here, but that they also will have a causal body on these higher levels of the cosmic mental plane. Now, in this particular case, the causal body here illustrated is the causal body of a solar logos, actually, we're told, on the first subplane of the cosmic mental plane, and that the causal body of our planetary logos is found on the third subplane of the cosmic mental plane. So, an analogy, where is the soul of man found? Well, soul is consciousness. So in a way, wherever there is being, wherever there is monad, whether confined to the monadic vehicle or somehow on the path of way of higher evolution and no longer confined to the kind of monadic vehicle we find on a monadic plane, wherever there is that monad, that point of being, there will be soul. If we understand soul in a very wide sense, a cosmic sense. But if we want to look at soul from a more confined point of view, we find that for man, that type of consciousness occurs way down here in the causal body of the, let's see. Okay, I haven't played with this too much, maybe a little bit. And here it would be the human causal body. So, excuse me, that type of consciousness is soul for man. Now, if we went higher onto the cosmic mental plane and the third sublevel, the type of consciousness found there, and maybe eventually moving with initiation to the second sublevel, would be called cosmic soul. And that's where we are in our little discussion here. We're talking about the cosmic soul of the Lord of the world, his overshadowing cosmic soul, his own solar angel, you might say. There are these cosmic solar angels, of which our advanced but little solar angels are an emanation. Well, they're certainly far beyond us in their development, and we can only imagine the level of development of a cosmic solar angel, such as is helping along our planetary logos, and from what I understand, a type of cosmic solar angel still more advanced is helping in the evolution of our solar logos. These are little kind of hints that flash out at us when we read such a book as A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. So the Lord of the world is the sole repository of the will and purpose of his overshadowing cosmic soul. So the Lord of the world is active upon the cosmic physical plane, but from the cosmic mental plane are coming the directives. So what can we say here? Maybe his directives come from the cosmic mental plane on its third sub-level. At least that's what we're told, but just the way for a human being, the causal body shifts its focus to the second subplane when the initiatory process begins. So we would begin to think that there's a shift going on for our planetary logos because the initiatory process certainly has begun. He is a cosmic initiate of the first degree and working towards his cosmic second initiation, by which time, well, it may still be a shift. Maybe the sacred planets who are transfigured in a certain sense would have their causal bodies completely focused upon the second cosmic sublevel of the cosmic mental plane. So, sounds like a lot of details and reading a complicated map, but we want to understand the evolution of the great and the small according to the law of analogy. And this law of analogy is the great interpretive law, with the more detailed law of correspondences, or law of correspondence, offering still more in-depth understanding. Analogies can be sort of broad and general. Correspondences tend to be quite exact and exacting. So these two words, will and purpose, we're familiar with them in terms of the first ray, sometimes called will and power. Purpose is interesting because from my perspective it has a lot of the second ray in it, whereas will tends to be a great driving supportive power which allows existence or destroys the possibility of existence. Anyway, he says they're not identical in meaning, and I think that's very true. Now, some people put the sequence as purpose, will, and intention. And one can understand that sequence because then will seems to be an instrument to effect the divine purpose, to make sure the divine purpose actually is effective, effectual, and in effect. But from another point of view, there's a higher version of the will, which itself, as a power, even sustains that relationship of energies, an archetypal relationship of energies, which we call purpose. At least that's my present way of understanding it. Let's see what he says. Sanat Kumara and his council at Shamballa, which would be on the logoic plane, and we don't know what level of the logoic plane. Perhaps Sanat Kumara himself is the only one who is truly located on the highest subplane of the logoic plane, although there are these other esoteric Buddhas, which sometimes are placed around Sanat Kumara and even above him in the representation. But I would say that that would be his ultimate home on the cosmic physical plane. Obviously, Sanat Kumara has other focuses, foci, on the cosmic astral and cosmic mental plane, and, you know, in his cosmic soul. And of course, we could go on with that because every one of these great beings also has a monadic nature, but when we know so little about our own monadic nature, I wonder what we can possibly speculate about the monadic nature of these great beings, except perhaps a position on a poorly understood cosmic map. Well, anyway, Sanat Kumara and his council, that's the innermost part of Shamballa, his council at Shamballa, are the only beings, he does capitalize the word, upon our planet who know just what is the nature of the divine purpose. The nature of divine purpose for our planet as it fits into the larger purpose, as our planetary purpose fits into the larger solar systemic purpose. It is their function and obligation to work that purpose out into manifestation. There's the first ray and the seventh ray again, and this they do by the use of the will. So indeed, the highest and the lowest meet, which is the word of power, for the seventh ray. But in this case, we might say that the highest is the first ray and the lowest is the manifestation made possible through the seventh ray. It is their function and obligation to work that purpose out into manifestation, and this they do by the use of the will, supremely, carefully adjusted to the state of the form through which they must work. The will ever implements the purpose. Now, from this point of view, the will is, let's just say here, the will is the instrument of purpose. But what I'm trying to say, but I will say also, the will, in the higher sense, sustains that energy relationship which is divine purpose. So, you know, there's a leapfrogging going on here, and let's just say that the purpose demands relationship of different energies in an archetypal form. As a matter of fact, these are the forms of Plato. He called them the great forms. They are the archetypes. In a way, they are the word. In a way, they are found on the monadic plane. That which comes from the logoic plane is like the sustaining power of will, which holds these energies in the archetypal relationship, which must be sustained throughout the development of the planet and solar system and so forth. Okay, the repository of the will aspect of man's innate divinity is to be found at the base of the spine. That's will. So will at the base of spine center, and interestingly enough, excuse me, purpose will be found at the crown center. But of course, as I say, we can continue to will, purpose, and go on. And my sense of things is that purpose is a combination of the first and second ray. It's the second aspect, in my view, of the first ray, because it involves relationship and highly calibrated archetypal relationship. But the great sustaining or destroying power is the will. Sometimes these words are used rather loosely, even by the Tibetan, not always in an exacting manner. So it's hard to understand sometimes exactly what they mean. But, sometimes, let's say you as a human being have a purpose. Well, and sometimes you may drop that purpose and say, I have no purpose in life. It's like the energy relationship that you seek to see manifested has fallen apart, disintegrated. But there is a holding power behind the purpose, and as long as it holds, it's the will to do the purpose so that it manifests on whatever plane is targeted, probably the outer plane. So the great sustaining energy, which is not about relationship per se, but is about does it exist or doesn't it exist, is the will. And we will find places where will is placed in that mode as that which makes purpose possible, or the sustainment of the archetypal relationship, which is purpose. But like I say, some very good thinkers have a different point of view on this, and I'm not going to be dogmatic about it. The will ever implements the purpose. So there is an aspect of will which carries purpose into manifestation. Well, let me just put it down. There is an aspect of will which sustains purpose, and there is an aspect of will which carries purpose into manifestation. And those are two different functions. One type of will sustains the archetype. The other takes the archetype and relates it to the divine plan and implements the purpose as plan in time and space. Okay, so, but the base of the spine center is the repository of the will aspect. When you look at the three sub-diaphragmatic chakras, you've got first ray connected with the base of the spine, the will. second ray connected with the solar plexus, desire, and third ray connected with the sacral center, which is procreativity. So this can only function correctly and be the agent of divine will after the third initiation. Now, why is that? At the third initiation, the crown center and the base of spine center begin to come into definite relationship, completed at the fifth initiation. The head center is the one which is the custodian of the purpose. I've always found this section very useful. It's like the relationship between Uranus, which is the head center, and an essentially first-rate planet on its monadic level, and Pluto, which is one of the planets ruling at the base of the spine center and has a very strong first ray, but perhaps not in its monadic nature. So I'm going to outline these 2 points. And when you think about the astrological chart and what is possible when Uranus and Pluto are in tight aspect of some kind and the person is sufficiently advanced, then you will have the possibility of relating the head center, the crown, to the base of the spine, and not before. For lesser types of human beings, we might simply get the atomic energy in its destructive nature, or perhaps in its sustaining nature, or there might be a great emotional transformation or some sort of transformation where the way is cleared, Pluto, towards the archetype, Uranus. There's whatever aspect in the astrological chart may exist, we have to think about the level of evolution achieved by the person who has that chart. You just cannot read the same way for everybody. So, as DK is emphasizing from the very beginning, have at least an approximate idea of the level of evolution of the person for whom you are doing the reading. Are they, traveling clockwise on the wheel? Are they traveling counterclockwise? Are they essentially a personality? Are they becoming a soul? Are they even becoming a spirit? There are perhaps 3 great levels of interpretation, and if we want to be more meticulous, we can add more, the undeveloped, the average, the aspirant, the disciple, the initiate. Okay, so the head center is the one which is the custodian of purpose, and of course, the head center is very, very elaborate when we compare it to the structure of the base of the spine center, because, purpose is multifaceted and has to bring together into right archetypal relationship all the different ray energies and astrological energies. The ray energies are represented in the head center by the 7 head centers, as they are called, and maybe they appear in 2 varieties, within the head and above the head. And the purpose, right, and the zodiac is represented by the 12 petals of the heart within the head. So these are our formative energies. The energy of the zodiac, 12, and the energies of the 7 rays, 19 energies, and maybe we would add some kind of superordinate 3 to get to one of those mystical, magical numbers, 22. The center at the base of the spine indicates the will as it implements the purpose. So Pluto is clearing the way for the will, and I have found this very useful because, Uranus is always the new. I mean, it has existed, but it has not existed in manifestation. And when it appears in manifestation, it seems like the new, even though it has been the archetypal purpose, which holds the beginning and the end in relationship all the way through the time-space process. And Pluto is really using the will to make sure that gradually that Uranian purpose is manifested. As he says here, the purpose is slowly, very slowly revealed to the initiate during the final 5 initiations, and this only becomes possible after the initiation of renunciation. So, in a way, are we not talking, we are speaking of initiations 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So from the time you are, as it were, a first-degree initiate and entered apprentice in relation to the Sirian system, the star Sirius, there are 5 initiations at which purpose is revealed, and we might almost proceed astrologically in some ways. I mean, initiation 5 is Leonian, initiation 6 is monadic and hence Virgoan. Is initiation 7 Libran, or do we have Leo all over again? And initiation 8, it's a transition, it's like a death to the cosmic physical plane. You begin to leave it, it's a Scorpio possibility here. And is 9 related to the 9th sign Sagittarius, in which finally, free entirely of the cosmic physical plane, you can take your onward monadic journey either as a monad working on the cosmic astral, or moving towards the cosmic mental, or in one case at least moving towards the cosmic Buddhic plane. Now, these are things that lie ahead of the masters, so if they, someone like DK, had not mentioned it, we would not have the slightest inkling about it, most probably. So, okay, purpose, the slow revelation of purpose. Purpose always has to be seen in a wider context. It has to be seen as a relationship, a relationship within a hierarchical structure. So I'm going to put that down, that purpose must be seen as a relationship within an hierarchical structure. Okay. So whereas plan is difficult enough for us to apprehend, some little idea of our place in the plan must be dawning on us as we understand our abiding rays that stay the same at this time, life after life. And as we understand the 7 ashrams and what their contribution may be, we get some idea of the divine plan. As we understand the astrological cycles, and maybe the ray cycles to a certain extent, the timing of things may appear clearer to us. But purpose is conceived within a larger context. The purpose of our planetary logos must be conceived within a solar systemic context. The purpose of our solar system must be conceived within the context of a cosmic logos, and the purpose of the cosmic logos must be conceived within the context of the supercosmic logos, who has been called the one about whom naught may be said, and on it goes. At that time, so as the purpose is gradually revealed, the initiate says, in unison with the great head of the hierarchy, the Christ, Father, not my will, but thine be done. This is the great statement in the Garden of Gethsemane as the Christ is passing through a phase of the 6th initiation. Now, I guess, with whom did he say this in unison? It's difficult to say. He was strengthened and comforted, we are told, by an angel associated with the constellation Capricorn, certainly a highly willful and purposeful sign. But now the further initiates on their way to the Father, the Christ is again repeating within himself what he learned in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he does that in unison with the advancing initiates. It's interesting, he does this amazingly, even with the first initiation, where he retakes the first initiation with every new candidate for the first initiation. So his range is incredible, and his ability to identify with the great and small is well established and very flexible. Then comes the initiation of emergence out of matter, and from that point on, the initiate begins to glimpse the purpose of the planetary logos. Now, there is let's try to be clear here. This Father, not my will, but thine be done, this applies to the 6th initiation, but also to the 4th initiation. Because, in terms of Master Jesus's, or the initiate Jesus's response, it's about the crucifixion and passing through this great difficulty that lies ahead. So, okay, and now I have to make sure that the color is correct. All right, or correct enough, right? Okay, but also to the 4th initiation. So the renunciation comes, that's the 4th. I think we're clear about that, right? The 4th initiation. And at that time, the initiate says, in unison with the great head of the hierarchy of the Christ. In other words, the 4th initiation leads to the 6th. At that time, and let's just say the initiate is in association with a 6th degree, 6th degree initiate, as the initiate Jesus was in association with the Christ, and as I think, I'm trying to develop this theory, as the initiate Gautama was in association with Buddha, who had already been for almost 2,500 years the head of the hierarchy. As I explained, it's not needed for the head of the hierarchy, the Buddha, to go wandering through the jungle to discover his higher nature. He knows that. He's been head of the hierarchy for 2,500 years, almost since the death of Krishna, 3,000 or so BC, and the beginning of the Kali Yuga. So there's a lot of confusion in Buddhism and Christianity. Jesus is taken for the Christ, and in my view, Gautama is taken for the Buddha. And even though the relationship was intimate, it is essentially the relationship of a 6th degree initiate with a 4th degree initiate in both cases. Then the initiation of emergence out of matter, and from that point on, the initiate begins to glimpse the purpose of the planetary logos. And this can be seen as the 5th initiation, and the ways of higher evolution begin to appear, and the purpose of the logos begins to appear. And somewhere else he says that as well. The purpose of the planetary logos begins to dawn upon the initiate at the 5th initiation. So hitherto he has only seen the plan. The plan, in a way, goes as far as the atmic plane, and the atmic plane is the 5th from below, and the initiation being taken is the 5th. But then the initiate begins to look on towards the 6th, and on the plane of monad, purpose is known, and the archetype is found. So hitherto he has only seen the plan, and to the service of the plan he has been dedicated, as we must be dedicated, knowing very little of the purpose, but able to grasp somewhat more and more of the divine plan and how we can help with that. Hitherto also he has only sought to be an exponent of the love of God, and now he must express with increasing fullness the will of God. Let's just say the monad is coming into more direct relationship with the initiate after the 4th initiation, and still more at the 5th initiation. It's a Leo initiation, and Leo has this will to rule and the will to illumine. Leo is a first race sign. It's the 5th sign corresponding with the 5th initiation. Its symbol is perhaps the sun. The symbol of the master is the sun. And that's when we really rise out of the results of the supernova of the causal body and all of the debris in space. All of that is cleared away, and we have an illumination regarding a revelation. That's the name of the 5th degree. A revelation regarding the purpose, our purpose, when we are truly the monad at the 6th degree, and of the paths, a revelation of the paths which we can take, and one of which we really must take. Okay. So, emergence out of matter is happening at the 4th degree, but it's also happening even more at the 5th degree. And as far as emergence out of the Brahmic worlds, the lower 5 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, it's happening at the 6th initiation, because the lower 5 are always considered to be material, the upper 2 planes more esoteric and less material. Brahma is the material aspect, and we emerge out of Brahma as we take the 6th initiation. So it's a progressive emerging out of matter, away from the causal body at the 4th, away from the debris that's left of the destruction of the causal body at the 5th, away from the lower 5 subplanes, the top of which is the atmic plane at the 6th initiation. And of course, there still can be effectiveness in the planes below, even though one is focused as a monad. I think we'll see that with the Christ, and we began to see that with the Christ, although it was more towards the end of his career in Palestine that he really emerged into the complete monadic identification. All right, now I'm going to take just a little break and I'll be back. We've done about an hour or so. I'm going to keep going because I find time is short, and even though it's not as convenient to handle these larger programs, I well realize I have no time that I can waste if I can possibly save that time. All righty. Well, now, continuing, my wife just informed me that in about an hour, the Bach's St. Matthew Passion is coming on, whether it's television or computer. It's a very great temptation, which I think I'm going to have to indulge. But let's see if I can finish this section before that happens. So we're about an hour and 1 minute into the process. Earlier in these pages, we are told that the problem which confronts the hierarchy as it seeks to prepare disciples for the successive initiations is the right use of the will, something that we only successively understand and slowly. And really, we're not yet in that solar system where will is the main aspect of divinity to be expressed. So the right use of the will, both their own use of the will in relation to the initiate, how the master interacts with his will in relation to the initiate, and the initiate's use of the will as he works for the plan, as that plan implements the purpose. So what do we have here? The two aspects of the will, which the initiate must come to understand from above, and the manner in which the initiate wields it below. So to produce this, a direct understanding and powerful expression of the first aspect is needed. And, we've been dealing with the love aspect. Of course, the entire love aspect is under, well, let's just say the entire will aspect, first aspect, is in this solar system under the second aspect. In the next solar system, it'll be a different story. But the great will is the will to good, the will to love, and it is the will which makes possible the expression of divine love in a larger and inclusive sense. But going on, to produce this, the direct understanding and powerful expression of this first aspect is needed, and the first aspect is hard to understand in this solar system. Matter of fact, in our solar system, there is somewhat of a, as I understand it, a deflection of the first aspect, so that our solar logos can particularly work in a concentrated manner upon developing the second aspect. But in preparation for the next solar system, of course, the first aspect has to be brought to a certain extent. If our solar logos takes the fifth initiation in this solar system, which is not guaranteed, the fourth I think is guaranteed, there will be there will be necessitated a very full understanding of the first aspect, and our particular planet with its first ray monad will have to wield that energy to assist the solar logos to take the fifth initiation, which connects Pluto, the base of the spine, and also Earth, the base of the spine, with the Sun Uranus, the area of purpose. There are several reasons why the will presents a problem. Let us list a few of them and thereby get understanding. The energy of will is the most potent energy in the whole scheme of planetary existence. I guess that's all the planets, but certainly in our scheme, because we are essentially, in our scheme, our Earth scheme, a first ray monad, which is as yet occultly ineffective or non-effective because we are not yet a sacred planet. It is called the Shamballa Force, and this is very interesting. It has not only to do with our chain and our globe. Shamballa, in some sense, is applies to the entire planetary scheme. So, PLT scheme. And it is that which holds all things together in life. Now, that's a very occult statement. But the will does have this great holding power. The will can do many things, and let's just say the Leo aspect of the will particularly has the holding power, the Aries aspect, the impulsive power, the Capricorn aspect, the impositional power. Planetary scheme. Okay, so it is in reality life itself, the Shamballa Force. Well, life, vitality. Okay, considering life as vitality, then this can be said. If we consider life as being maybe something else. Okay. This Shamballa Force, because sometimes we think, that it applies only to our globe. Well, just the way there are different kinds of Buddhas, globe Buddhas, chain Buddhas, scheme Buddhas, so there are different expressions of Shambhala. This life force or divine will, implementing divine intention, and let's just say like this, intention is more specific and related to manifestation. Okay. Right. Um, is that by means of which Sanat Kumara arrives at his goal? And Sanat Kumara is far more than simply a globe being. He is manifesting in relation to our globe and also to the second globe of our chain. But when one considers Shambhala on a scheme level, then Sanat Kumara must be a scheme being. So all of this, if we study emanation, can be understood. Smaller and smaller emanations of the same being, or at least more and more focused, form-specific emanations of the same being. Right now, Sanat Kumara's focus, at least as we are, as it is revealed to us through the Tibetan, is on our globe. But he's a much greater being than that. On a tiny scale, it is the use of one of the lowest aspects of the will, human self-will, which enables a man to carry out his plans and attain his fixed purpose if he has one. So this is useful, but certainly not extensive and complete with regard to the will. Where the will is lacking, the plan dies out and purpose is not achieved. So in time and space, the plan is what makes it possible to manifest the entirety of the purpose, which exists in a way in the eternal now and not simply as a sequential revelation. We might say purpose is revealed sequentially through the divine plan. Where the will is lacking, the plan dies out and the purpose is not achieved. And we can understand that on a very microcosmic level too, right on the level of our own personality or soul-infused personality. Sorry, due to this cold, my voice is a little in that way. Even in relation to self-will, it is veritably the life of the project. Will keeps things going, you know. It is the vitality which continues to advance the plan, which implements the purpose behind the plan. The moment Sanat Kumara has attained his planetary purpose, so this looks at Sanat Kumara as a great scheme being, we might say, as a kind of, well, he's said to be so many different things, but he's the planetary logos in emanation with a particular emphasis upon the second ray. He will withdraw this potent energy, and in this withdrawing, destruction will set in. So in this particular case, Sanat Kumara is presented as the planetary logos. There seem to be 5 or 6 different ways that he is described as the personality of the planetary logos, the soul-infused personality of the planetary logos, the soul aspect of the planetary logos as the planetary logos himself. So we just have to be very sensitive to the context. He is, in a way, the planetary logos in active extension throughout the planetary scheme. This Shamballa force is steadily held in leash for fear of too great an impact upon the unprepared kingdoms in nature. And World War II was an example of, let's call it premature appropriation of the Shamballa force. This has reference to its impact also upon humanity. Okay. The power that touches and withdraws. If it touches for too long a time, the form cannot stand it. If you put your finger in an electrical socket, which is live, and somehow you engage with the electricity, I think you will withdraw your finger. If you don't, there can be a problem. That's another way of describing too long an exposure to a force too great. You have been told this force during the century made its first direct impact upon humanity. Well, okay, let's not forget also in 1825 from the second ray angle. And if we're looking for this century, if he's writing of the 20th century, we really are dealing with 1975 and 2000. So maybe he is suggesting that I'm going to make this SHF, and I'm going to call it Shamballa Force, because I think it'll save a little time. He's suggesting that the Shamballa Force was impactful during the Great War from 1914 to 1945, although this may have been probably written after 1945. Impact. Is there such a word? Well, we can pretend there is. Impactful, yes. Heretofore it reached mankind in the three worlds after being stepped down and modified by transit through the great planetary center to which we give the name of hierarchy. In other words, love modified this force hitherto. But, can we stand the direct exposure? Well, now we've left the 20th century and we've had two further impacts. 1975 impact, which was only an anticipation when this was written, and the year 2000 impact, also an anticipation. So here it is hinted somehow that in the century and before 1975, there was a direct impact upon humanity of the Shamballa Force, and we can actually ask, when was this? Excuse me. So this direct impact will again take place in 1975. We certainly had an amazing sort of third aspect expansion along the line of communications. The world was linked up into one immediately accessible sphere. This direct impact will again take place in 1975 and also in the year 2000, but the risks then will not be so great as in the first impact, owing to the spiritual growth of mankind. And, this is a hinted first impact. But the only other confirmation we have of the Shamballa impact is 1825. And yet constantly there is the hint that somehow in this century there has been an impact. Well, there was the 1903, is it? A great decision where the Chohans of Shamballa make a choice which will have a tremendous impact upon humanity. 1952, that had not yet occurred when this was written. 2001. So I don't think he's talking about the great decision at those 3 times, the only one of which occurred before he was writing was the 1903 impact, and then probably 1854 and so forth, and 1805, I guess. So, this is a little bit in the gray area, but suffice it to say that Shamballa came out powerfully and directly in the 20th century. And not to forget, of course, the 1825 impact. Before that, there were no direct impacts. Maybe that which brought down Atlantis and that which brought down Lemuria could be considered direct impacts. Each time this energy strikes into the human consciousness, some fuller aspect of the divine plan appears. And we have to hope and trust that this is the case with the year 2000 impact, which resonates to the number 2 and hence the second ray, and maybe greater understanding will be present. The 1975 is 10, 17, and 23. So it's a ray 5 factor, which we have certainly seen in incredible expansion of technology, even without the 5th ray ashram fully in expression, or the 5th ray on its own fully in expression, because it was deemed too dangerous to let it continue along the line it took. It is the energy which brings about synthesis, and certainly we've seen that in the synthesis of contact, which holds all things within the circle of divine love, and that we are looking for. And look at this holding power of the will. The idea of holding is very much there. Since its impact during the past few years, so I guess he's talking about, in this case, the war, because this was, Alice Bailey passed on in 1949. In the past few years, if this was written rather late in the 40s, would have been war years. Human thinking has been more concerned with the production of unity and the attainment of synthesis in all human relations than ever before. And one result of this energy has been the forming of the United Nations under the 1st and also, he says, 4th rays in a 2nd ray city, New York City. Excuse me. So, the force which is bringing things together. Jupiter is a bit like that too. And there's a question about what the monadic ray of Jupiter may be. Okay. All right, so that's the first discussion here. Let's see if there's a number. Okay, now we're talking about a problem. The will, there are several reasons why the will presents the problem, and that's the nature of our discussion at the moment, and talking about direct impact and its possibilities. Now, number 2, it will be apparent to you, therefore, that this energy is the agent for the revelation of divine purpose, and let's just say not only for the divine plan. It may surprise you that this is regarded as presenting a problem to the hierarchy, but if this power, impersonal and potent, should fall into the hands of the Black Lodge, the result would be disastrous indeed, and we might say that atomic energy almost did fall into their power. And now again, we seem to have some nations that are arming up atomically, and are not, I would say, counted among the nations that Master DK said could be trusted with the atomic energy and atomic bomb. That seems pretty clear, so we have the same problem now on a higher turn of the spiral, or lower. And how it will work out, we do not know. But I'm quite sure that Pakistan and maybe India and North Korea and so forth were not thought of as countries that could be trusted with this power. And as far as that goes, maybe North Korea did not exist at all at the time that this was written. Most of the members of this center of cosmic evil are upon the first ray itself. He said all of Hitler's group was on the first ray or first subray, and some of the divine purpose is known to a few of them, for in their due place and in the initiatory regime, they too are initiates of high degree, but dedicated to selfishness and separativeness. In other words, synthesis is not their objective, or unity. I suppose they can understand where it's intended to be directed, our planetary process, our solar systemic process, and contrive for reasons of their, what DK calls unique blindness, to thwart that possibility. Their particular form of selfishness is far worse than anything you can imagine, because they are completely detached and divorced from all contact with the energy to which we give the name of love. Although he did say, if you're one of these Black Lodge types and you function on the second ray and you let the dweller get the better of you, the second ray dweller, you will become a deluder of souls. But I think here he's talking about those who are centered not so much on our systemic astral plane, but on the cosmic astral plane. And he tells us we really shouldn't be speculating too much about them, because it is dangerous. I suppose we could attract their attention through that speculation. Worse than anything you can imagine. Well, I don't think it's profitable to sit down and begin to imagine how evil they really are, but he does call them lords of hateful, wicked pride and hateful lust, or I think that's it. Let me take a quick look. He gives us the idea, and it's quite ugly words, but okay. Hateful, wicked, pride, there it all is. And wicked pride and hateful lust, yeah. The place of endless death, and hides the countenances of the lords of wicked pride and hateful lust. Rays and Initiations, page 754. I guess we'll be getting to that. They have cut themselves off from the spiritual hierarchy and from the Syrian method of evolution, and they're evolving along some Davic line with a huge development of the concrete mind, but eventual solar systemic destruction awaiting them, all the monadic achievement cut and gone, having to start again. They have cut themselves off from the spiritual hierarchy, through whom the love of the planetary logos reaches the forms in the three worlds and all that is contained therein. There are these evil but powerful beings know well the uses of the will, but only in its destructive aspect, and this is particularly, believe it or not, the third aspect. of that force. The second aspect has to do with synthesis. The first aspect, I think, has a lot to do with the will to be. We could begin to differentiate these different aspects of the will. So there are said to be 6 of these leaders in the West and 6 in the East, and the Eastern ones being far more powerful because more experienced. We have spoken much of the purpose of the planetary logos. When I use the word purpose, I'm indicating answer to the question, why did the planetary logos create this world and start the evolutionary creative process? Well, there was a lot of redemption to work out in relation to the previous solar system, which under the third aspect and some incomplete alignments had its problems, and there was supposedly a rebellion which occurred in the previous solar system, which set the stage for the misuse of the third aspect of divinity in this solar system. But why did this happen? Obviously we're sort of the planetary hospital here and on Earth scheme, and we are busy redeeming the third aspect. We have the third ray personality, the third aspect of divinity. Only one answer has as yet been permitted to be given. Sanat Kumara has created this planet. Now here, okay. This means, from this perspective, Sanat Kumara is the planetary logos. Okay. So you just have to watch the different ways, whether expansive or more narrow and focused, that he uses the word Sanat Kumara. It's quite fluid, actually. Sanat Kumara has created this planet and all that moves and lives therein in order to bring about a planetary synthesis and an integrated system whereby a tremendous solar revelation can be seen. What a hint, what a hint. Now, what's the name of the... this is interesting, very interesting. Okay, so name of the fifth initiation is the revelation. And the base of spine center and the head center are then fully connected. And Earth is the base of spine center of the solar logos. So I think you can see how it works. That if Earth is successful in the synthesis, it will develop its monadic ray, the first which will allow it to take its place as the will center, base of spine center, in relation to the solar logos, who needs to take possibly the fifth initiation of revelation in this solar system. You might only take the fourth and have to defer the fifth. Much depends, I suppose, on the interaction between the solar logos and the Earth logos. Interesting. Head center. Okay. Yeah, okay. Having said that, we have not really penetrated any distance into the meaning of the divine purpose. Well, Earth is to become also a station of light and somehow connect and vitalize many different factors within the solar system. I suppose with the help of Mercury, the interconnecting planet, and Mars and Pluto in their own ways. There's a lot going on at the base of spine of the solar logos, and different planetary logoi make their contributions. So we've only indicated the method whereby it is being attained. If we really develop a very synthetic integrated system. Okay, so if the planetary logos of Earth develops, okay, well, I guess I have to just write it out. Sorry. Develops a integrated, synthesized planetary expression. But the true objectives still remain an obscure mystery, guarded rigidly in the council chamber of Shamballa, probably on the logoic plane. Who are we to presume? But somewhere, there was this idea of the station of light, and the great theme to be developed by our planetary logos is the theme of light. It is this mystery and this divine planetary secret which is the goal of all the work being done by the Black Lodge, so they can spoil the desired effect. Terrible to play the role of a spoiler and be so blind as to be deprived of identification with the greater whole, but that's what they've decided upon. And of course, the day of enlightenment will come, and the day of disillusionment will come, but we're talking a long way ahead. Some of these types will just lose everything they have accumulated in the trillions of years, both subjective and objective, of our solar system. They are not yet sure of the purpose, and all their efforts are directed to the discovery of the nature of the mystery, and hence the hierarchical problem. We might say, how to reveal to the upcoming students gradually, and yet how to conceal from the Black Lodge. Well, it is the work of Shamballa to fight with this group. It's not our work. Our work is much closer to home, and those cosmic lords who find their focus on the cosmic astral plane are not going to be bothering with types such as we are. Those who are on the systemic or the cosmic physical plane, and there are the evil beings of Marakara on the astral plane, and I suppose on some of the mental plane, and even in rare instances on the higher mental plane. They are the ones with whom we have to deal. Now, okay, so we're going on and still describing the problem of the hierarchy in relation to the divine will. It is this energy of will rightly focused that enables the senior members of the hierarchy to implement that purpose, what should we say, to carry it into manifestation, the will being a tool to do so. Only initiates of a certain standing can receive this energy, focus it within the hierarchy, and then direct its potency to certain ends known only to them, so that standing must be an hierarchical standing. And must one be a master? Is it sufficient to be an arhat, who is a member of hierarchy, of course, and is coming into a more direct relationship with the monad? Anyway, it's a high state of initiation before the energy of the will can really be conferred and wielded and focused. Speaking symbolically, the hierarchy has within it, under the custody of its most advanced members, are these, in a way, custodians of the plan, what might be called a reservoir of divine intention. Well, intention is more specific than either the will or the purpose. Intention gets into the specifics of application of purpose and plan to formal arrangements on the lower planes. It is the higher correspondence to that which Patanjali refers under the words, the raincloud of knowable things. And of course we have that other raincloud of unknowable things, at least for man as presently constituted. It is the higher correspondence to which Patanjali refers under the words. So it's this reservoir of intention, reservoir of divine intention. It's a high concentration. Sorry. So just as we can begin through our intuition to begin to access something that is known within the triad, so can the higher initiates begin to access something that is known on still higher levels, where the monadic levels perhaps, where purpose can be understood. The raincloud of knowable things, which hovers over the head of all disciples who can see somewhat in the light, and this is probably a factually and an occultly factual statement. Probably over the head. Well, in what form? Ready to precipitate? He never tells us whether some of his statements are purely symbolic or whether they convey a factual, concrete information. This looks like the conveyance of some pretty concrete information. Anyway, there is an analogy here, and when we want to know, it's the rain cloud, well, let's just call it, which reveals purpose. We are dealing with the rain cloud, which reveals purpose. I think I better, okay. Just as advanced humanity can precipitate the rain of knowledge from this cloud of knowable things, through our antikarana work and through our invocation, which summons a kind of evocation from above. These noble things, divine ideas, working out as intuitions from the Buddhic plane and all the many areas of human thinking. So the lesser initiates and disciples within hierarchy can begin to precipitate into their consciousness some of the divine intention, and later, I suppose, divine purpose. And so divine intention is higher than the knowledge which advanced humanity and early disciples can precipitate. Okay. It is this reservoir of power, divine intention. It's available to us. It actually is. Let's see if okay. What have I done? Okay. Right. I want to overcome this mistyping. Okay. It is this reservoir of power, this divine intention, quite concrete, quite specific as part of the plan, which embodies some of the purpose and implements the plan. So at a certain standing, that's the idea here, at a certain level of standing, the precipitation becomes possible. One of the problems, and that's what we're talking about here in these three factors, how strong the Shamballa Force is and how much the Black Lodge wants to get its hands on the purpose and wants to have this energy of the Shamballa Force fall into its hands so it can wreak mischief and stop the progress of the greater synthetic beings for a while. So just as advanced humanity can precipitate the rain of knowledge from this cloud of noble things, divine ideas, working out as intuitions in all the many areas of human thinking, so the lesser initiates can begin to precipitate the divine intention. Now let's see so one of the problems of the hierarchy is therefore right timing in the revelation of divine intention and in the direction of the thinking and the planning done in their ashrams by the recipients, initiates, and disciples. So knowledge of the cycles is very necessary. So often, when talking to people about what one studies, it's possible to say, well, I study the cycles instead of I study astrology, because the segue from cycles into astrology is fairly easy, and the study of cycles is not so off-putting and therefore involves the possibility of a conversation instead of the negation of that possibility. Again, we come back to the same necessity for right interpretation of the revelation or of the vision, and basically what we're saying here is that hierarchy, get rid of that, hierarchy must have this right interpretation, devoid of illusion. All right. So now on to the fourth problem. Hierarchy has such a responsible role. It has to bring through and share, and yet not let this higher knowledge of purpose or the higher Shamballa Force fall into the hands of those who want to thwart the plan and thereby negate the possibility of the manifestation of the purpose. It's a real razor-edged path for them. The problem number 4 here is also one that each master has to face in connection with his own spiritual development. Remember, it does not cease, and he's treading the path of earth service temporarily, but he will have other paths which are possible, and it is said will fight his way onto the path of the solar logi. So for this energy is the needed dynamic or potency which enables him to tread the path of higher evolution, and that is the Shamballa Force. On the way to liberation and in treading the path of discipleship and the path of initiation, the human being has to use the dynamic or the potency of the love of God. It is legitimate, it is useful, it is unitive, it leads to synthesis. On the way of higher evolution, it must be the dynamic and the potency of will. Well, there are certain aspects of the will which mankind is increasingly able to use, and love cannot be forsworn. So I would ask you, therefore, to ponder on the distinction which is existing between self-will and determination, between fixity of purpose and the will, and between the spiritual will and the divine will. The spiritual will has so much to do with the atmic plane, and divine will with the monadic. Self-will is strong in the selfish area, and determination is not necessarily selfish, and considers the impact upon a larger environment. I mean, we'd have to meditate on these, wouldn't we? Fixity of purpose is already beyond determination and leads to the ability to appropriate the will, subjecting your own purpose to a higher archetypal objective. But then again, a month, 2, 3 should be taken using the Antikarana to understand these distinctions. The divine will, the word divine relates to the spirit, to the monad. Spiritual relates technically no higher than the atmic plane, although we use it in a loose way. Divinity is of the monad and of the liberated monad on the logoic plane. I shall not attempt to discuss these words with you. They each indicate a certain aspect of the will, all the way from the most selfish, desire-driven aspect to a complete relinquishment of anything selfish, petty, encapsulated, really tuning in on that which the logos, our planetary logos purposes, and later the solar logos. They each indicate a certain aspect of the will. You will learn more on this point by doing your own thinking and defining, Master Moria says to reveal all is to put on chains. To give all is to put on chains. All that I can hope and pray. And notice here's a master talking, and he's still hoping and praying, is that your individual will can be merged into the divine will. That revelation will be increasingly yours, and that you will, with increased steadfastness, tread the path from darkness to light and from death to immortality. And he left out, of course, from the real to from the unreal to the real, and later from chaos to beauty, and from individuality, the individual to the universal, which are still higher steps. So he comes back to more normal language, which is encouraging language and trying to bring us into these higher possibilities. Well, you know, in your study groups, you can work this out, and it would be my hope that you go deep, as deeply as possible. We know that we cannot extract from this material all that is hidden within it, that is given for those who have eyes to see and ears to understand and so forth. But we can go further than otherwise we might if we are serious about it and work together. So this is the end of Raised and Initiations webinar commentary number 98, and I'm finishing this on the 14th of December, and the St. Matthew Passion awaits me, and I just about have 2 minutes with it before it begins, so the next thing will be the beginning of Raised and Initiation webinar commentary number 99, and when will that be? Hopefully soon. So this is a deep book. Study hard, study together, apply it as best you can, remember what you can, relate what you remember, and apply what you remember as prompted by an inner knowing to a situation in which that which is remembered can successfully be applied. We'll see you. And Bach is great, so I hope it's a good performance. See you later. Lots of love, many blessings. Onward we go. Bye-bye.